Hello, dear Professor Neumann and dear students. My name is Katerina, and today Shad, Namin, Asjan, and I are happy to present you our presentation called Introduction to Animals People. This week we will start working with this novel of Indra Sinha. Before discussion, we would like to provide some information about the author, his works, his views, situation he described in his book, and main points of book itself. We would like to welcome you to our presentation called Introduction to Animals People. So today we are going to move according to the following plan. First of all, we are going to talk about the life of Indra Sinha, and the next step is to find out what happened during that night. So we are going to talk about the Bhopal gas tragedy. Also, we will provide some facts about the novel, characters, symbols and motifs, humanity and humanness, major themes, and the last slide is for references. In our presentation Introduction to Animals People, we are going to talk about different aspects of the book of Indra Sinha, but it is also important to give some information about his life, and I'm going to talk about his biography in more details. Indra Sinha was born in 1950 in Bombay. He was the son of an Indian naval officer and an English writer who wrote under the name of Rani Sinha and also influenced her son a lot. He attended school in India, but in 1967 he and his family decided to move to Britain, where he attended school as well. After he studied English literature at Pembroke College, and he really wanted to create documentaries and make it his career, but failed to persuade BBC to let him do it. Then he decided to become an advertising copywriter in London and also dealt with translation a lot during this career. In 1995, he left advertising to become a full-time writer, and he produced such books as The Cyber Gypsies in 1999, which is basically the story of pre-internet generation. Also, he published his first novel, The Death of Mr. Love, in 2002. It is the story which is set in Bombay and waves a fictional story around the Nanavati murder case, which led to the abolition of the jury system in India. And also Animals People, which is about the tragedy and the responsibility. We are going to talk about this book a lot during this presentation. Now Indra Sinha lives with his family in southern France and continues to write the stories. Behind this fictional story of Kaufpur is the real story of a tragedy in Bhopal. I like the idea Lucy Beresford presented that we should pay attention to the name of this city, because Kauf from Urdu is terror, so it is the story of utter terror and suffering. Animals People is set in this fictional city and tells the story of aftermath of a large-scale industrial catastrophe based on the Bhopal disaster of 1984 and the ongoing suffering of people. But what did basically happen that night? On the night of 2nd December 1984, an accident at the Union Carbide pesticide plant in Bhopal, India, released at least 30 tons of a highly toxic gas, which resulted in the death of more than 20,000 people and disablement of more than 2 million people. The gas affected not only those living, but even the generation that came after. This toxic material remains, and 30 years later, many of those who were exposed to the gas have given birth to physically and mentally disabled children, according to Atlantic. It's a big tragedy for both people of India and Indians' ecology. But the most frustrating thing is that neither government nor the head of the plant took full responsibility for this huge tragedy, and Sinha simply couldn't tolerate it. He has been a passionate campaigner for justice for the victims of the Bhopal disaster since 1993. He created the first advertisement for the Bhopal Medical Appeal using the now very famous photo of a dead child being buried that raised money to build a clinic to provide free treatment for the survivors affected by the gas and water poisoning. Apart from his novel Animals People, Sinha has given many interviews and written several articles on this subject, including one in The Guardian marking the 25th anniversary of the disaster, where he criticized corruption, hatred, and greed of Indian leaders.
Hello everybody, my name is Shahad and now I'm gonna talk about some facts about the novel Animals People. It was shortlisted for the 2007 Man Booker Prize. Moreover, it was the winner of the 2008 Commonwealth Writers' Prize as Best Book from Europe and South Asia. It was published in 2007 by an American publishing company which is called Simon & Schuster, and it contains 374 pages. Now we will move on to talk about some major characters. Animal is the protagonist and he is a young man. He just turned 17. He gets his name due to his appearance. He walks on four and his back is twisted beyond repair by the catastrophic events of that night when a burning fog of poison smoke from the local factory blazed out over the town of Kharpur and the apocalypse visited his slum. He said, I used to be human once, so I am told. I don't remember it myself, but people who knew me when I was small say I walked in 2 feet, just like a human being. Furthermore, he is professional in street work. He lives by his wits, spending his days spying on town officials. Moreover, his nights are spent fantasizing about Nisha, the girly friend of Zafar, and wondering what it must be like to get laid. The second character is Nisha. Nisha, she's the daughter of Sumarji, the girly friend of a local resistance leader named Zafar. She helps Animal. She sees Animal in the gutter and introduces him to Zafar, who finds a job for Animal. Furthermore, she teaches Animal how to read, write, and how to speak different languages. Animal said about her, she was the only person I knew who treated me as completely normal. Though she is the object of Animal's affection, yet sees him as a friend only. Another major character is Zafar, who is a saint and hero to the citizens of Kharpur, since he helps the sick and the poor after the contamination of company. Furthermore, he goes on a hunger strike to defend the people of Kharpur. Animals said about him, this Zafar was a legend because he had given up everything in his life for the poor. Zafar brother, they worshipped him, who lived among them, dressed like them, shared their poverty, and drank water from the same stinking wells. In addition to that, he gives Animal a job, which was to listen to people talking about the company. Zafar is in love with Nisha, and he eventually dies from starvation and dehydration. Ellie is another major character. She is an American doctor and an object of lust for Animal and others in the town. She arrives in Kharpur to open a free clinic for the still suffering townsfolk, only to find herself struggling to convince them that she isn't there to do the dirty work of the company. Animal said, poor Ellie, you are about to be betrayed by these undeserving arseholes you came to help. And last but not least, Somarji. Somarji is Nisha's father and a music teacher. The most important fact about him is that he used to be a famous singer, known through India, who was referred to as the voice of Kharpur. However, the night of the accident, he lost his wife and baby son, and his lungs were damaged.
Hi everybody, Narmin is here. I'm going to proceed about symbols and motifs in animals people. As you can see, I've highlighted the main symbols and motifs. It's that night, the company, voices and ghosts in this novel. So let's start. I'd like to start with that night as it's the reason Animal's back is bent and why he has no parents. And the reason so many people continue to suffer with debilitating illnesses. Animal describes that night, which no one in Kafue wants to remember, but nobody can forget. That night represents ongoing injustice, suffering, and dehumanization, and although the people succeed in revenge, the absence of concrete achievements in the court case show the magnitude of the harm done that night. Animal with his bent back represents the burden the people bear as a result of that night. While in his quotation the world of humans is meant to be viewed from eye level, Animal refers to his own difficulties living on all fours, his statement is a metaphor for the fact that the world is set up for certain kinds of people and not others. The company is a symbol of unchecked corporate power. The company has managed to escape punishment, claiming the Indian court has no jurisdiction over them and refusing to show up in court. The strength and invincibility of the company is depicted in Zafar's dream, in which a crow shows him the company's building in America, a building guarded by tanks and jets stuffed with banknotes, and full of lawyers and public relations consultants who ensure its continued power. The vulnerable people cannot contend with this power. Their protests and appeals to the government have no effect. And at the end, I'd like to speak about the voices. The title Animals People suggests that Animal is a voice to represent the poor, suffering people of Kafue. He himself a voice, telling his listener, now I'm talking to you, and our job is to listen to his story. Animal established early on that he hears voices in his head. Voices, whether it to be the voices of conscience, of ghosts, or of religious inspiration, tend to represent inner hopes, fears, or beliefs. Animal considers those inner voices sometimes distraction, often helpful, sometimes contradictory, and sometimes the provider of truth. Finally, I'm going to discuss the significance of the body in the novel by Indra Sinha's Animals People and how it's connected to the idea of humanity. Animal's body is the reason why people have named him like that, and that also why he sees himself not as a human being but as an animal. He consistently denies his humanness, beginning in tape 3 when he tells Zafar, I'm not a fucking human being. Animal feels less than human because he's not easily accommodated by the world of humans. His people, the poor, the ill, the non-Western, are dehumanized in a world whose systems benefit the rich and powerful. Their humanness is denied by the company and even by their own government. In the beginning of his narrative, he judges himself against a humanist standard. Animal's first words to the reader are, I used to be human once, so I'm told. Animal admits to himself and the readers that the reason he doesn't acknowledge his humanity lies in the fact that he'll also have to face the fact that he is disabled, that something is wrong with him, according to the notion of what makes a person normal or abnormal. Since if he considers himself an animal, He frees himself from these restrictions and positions himself in a space that allows him to be free. The question of boundaries that constitute what a human being is, raised by animals' unusual condition, is explored in Jennifer's Rickel's article, The Poor Remain. Rickel argues that through animals, Sinha's novel deconstructs the binary between the human and inhuman that defines the universal subject of human rights. And as the story progresses, an animal tells his story, his discussion of the changes of humans and animals gets more nuanced. Animals' decision in tape 23 to not undergo surgery and to remain four-footed forever is affirmation that one's humanness is defined by one's heart and not by society. Eventually, to animal, humanness is defined not by whether he walks upright, but by the joy of his experiences. The novel thus suggests that one's humanness is separate from whether one is accepted into humanity. However, even as he accepts himself, Animal doesn't pretend to solve the political problems faced by the next. After telling his personal story, he concludes, "Eyes, I'm done. Khudafis, go well. Remember me. All things pass, but the poor remain. We are the people of the apocalypse. Tomorrow there will be more of us." With this sudden dismissal of his reader, Animal makes it known that by listening to this story, the reader doesn't change the circumstances in which the victims of the Bhopal disaster live. Telling this story to the reader doesn't metaphorically release Animal's people from the toxic conditions under which they suffer. So that's all from me. Thank you very much for your attention and thank you very much for listening me.
Hello everyone, my name is Ashra and I'm going to talk about the major themes in Animals People. The first major theme in the novel is Westernization. The novel depicts Sina's view on Western influence. There is a chemical disaster caused by an American company on Indian soil. Moreover, it shows how Western materialism is objectified through the eyes of animal. There is also an apprehension towards the Western outsiders, including journalists or the journalist, Dr. Ellie, and the leader of the company or the company. Another important theme in the novel is the dehumanization of other. On the one hand, Animal is dehumanized by the other people because of his appearance. He is seen less than a human being. On the other hand, Animals People, the ill and the poor, are dehumanized by the American company, and they are also dehumanized by their government, which is supposed to protect them. Another important theme in the novel is responsibility. Although the American company, the company, is responsible for that night or the chemical disaster, it refuses to face the court and to decontaminate their factory, which continues to make people ill. Thousands of people say that for 20 years it has been ruined by your poisons. How do you refute that? Sina 69. Now, another important element or theme in the novel is identity. We have self-acceptance. Throughout the novel, Animal is struggling internally with who he is. However, and towards the end of the novel, and after coming to terms with who he is, Animal accepts his identity. Stay for food. I am the one and only animal. I no longer want to be a human. So there is a transformation in his identity, and this transformation is due to his personal experience rather than the events that he witnessed. Another important theme in the novel is love. There are two kinds of love in this novel. First, a mother-son relationship. It is Animal's love for Ma Francie. Here is Ma Francie talking about her love for Animal. My only family is this boy. Few people in the world I love. This old lady is one of them. And here is Animal describing his love for Ma Francie. Physical love is also there in the novel. It is Animal's love for Nisha. Here he is describing his feelings for Nisha in this quote. Lights are going on all over my body. Senses are drowned in the rushing of blood. A pulse is thudding in my ears. However, this love changes into a more compassionate love at the end of the novel because it seems that Animal wants Nisha as his family. Now I'm moving on to the conception of creaturely. According to Herman, humans and animals have a shared condition of embodiment, shared vulnerability vis-à-vis the environments they live in, highlight the entanglement, affiliation, and connectedness across species lines. Similarly, Pick emphasizes that the creature is first and foremost is a living body, immaterial, temporal, and vulnerable. Okay, based on these two quotes, we can say that both animal and other people have plights and are vulnerable to the disaster of the chemical materials. This means that humans and non-humans are exposed to the conditions of the environment, and as a result, the relationship between animal and the other people is not a hierarchical relationship. Rather, there are ties and interconnectedness between animal and the other people. Sina wrote his novel in order for humanity to feel responsible for what happens to the environment. Moreover, he wrote his story to make it applicable to all Western caused debacles. Thank you so much for your listening.